This story is titled, Ex-Fiancée Secretly Planned to Sell My Home to Pay Off Her Parents' Debt. So, I called off the wedding. Now they're all on the street. Hey everyone. I guess I'm writing this because I don't even know how to process everything that's happened recently. I'm a 34-year-old guy who thought life was pretty solid just a few months ago. I had a house I worked my ass off to buy, a fiancé I was excited to spend my future with, and plans for a wedding that was supposed to happen next summer. Everything felt like it was falling into place, until it didn't. Let me back up a bit. About 5 years ago, I managed to buy my own house. It's nothing crazy. 3 bedrooms, a decent backyard, and a little garage. But it's mine. I'd been saving up since my mid-20s, working extra shifts, skipping vacations, eating way more ramen than any human should. But when I finally got the keys, it was one of the proudest moments of my life. I remember just standing in the empty living room and thinking, I did this. I didn't grow up with much, so owning a home felt huge to me. Fast forward a few years, and I met Kelly. Not her real name, obviously. We hit it off pretty quickly. She's funny, outgoing, and the kind of person who lights up a room. At least, that's how she seemed when we first started dating. After about a year, she moved into my house. It felt like the right step, you know? She didn't contribute financially to the house itself, no mortgage payments or anything, but we split other things like groceries and bills. I didn't mind. I'd bought the house for myself before we even met, so I figured it was fair. Kelly's background was different from mine. Her family had always struggled with money. She told me stories about how they'd max out credit cards just to get by, and how her parents were always scrambling to stay afloat. I felt bad for her and her family. I mean, everyone's got their challenges, right? But over time, I started noticing little things that didn't sit right. Her mom would make these comments like, "Wow, Kelly, you really hit the jackpot with a guy who owns a house." Or her dad would joke about how nice it would be to retire without a mortgage. I didn't think too much of it at the time. It just seemed like harmless talk. Looking back, I realize now those comments were red flags I should have paid more attention to. The first real crack in our relationship happened when Kelly started talking about how much her parents were struggling. I mean, they'd been struggling for years, but apparently things had gotten worse. They were on the verge of losing their house because they couldn't keep up with their mortgage payments. Kelly was stressed about it, and I tried to be supportive. I offered advice, like maybe they could sell their place and downsize, or talk to a financial counselor. But Kelly didn't seem interested in solutions. She just kept saying how unfair it was, how her parents had worked so hard and deserved better. Then she started hinting, just little comments here and there, that it'd be nice if we could help them out. We, meaning me, of course. At first, I thought she was joking. Like, why would I be responsible for her parents' financial problems? But the more she brought it up, the more I realized she wasn't joking at all. To be honest, I didn't know how to handle it. I loved Kelly, or at least I thought I did, and I didn't want to fight with her over money. But at the same time, I wasn't about to bail out her parents. I worked my ass off to get where I am, and their poor financial decisions weren't my responsibility. I tried to explain that to Kelly, but she just got frustrated and said I didn't understand what it was like to grow up with nothing. That was the first time I started questioning if we were really on the same page about our future. Things started getting weird a few months ago. Kelly was on her phone a lot more than usual, whispering during calls, and acting jumpy whenever I walked into the room. She'd get snappy over the smallest things, like if I asked what she wanted for dinner. I figured it was just stress from wedding planning. I mean, planning a wedding is a lot, right? I didn't push her about it because I thought giving her space was the right thing to do. In hindsight, maybe I should have asked more questions. One day, I got this packet in the mail from a real estate agency. It had all these details about the sale of my house. My house. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake or some kind of scam. But when I looked closer, I saw the photos they'd included. It was definitely my house, down to the furniture in the living room. There was even a proposed closing date. I didn't understand what the hell was going on. That night, I brought it up to Kelly. I just asked her straight up if she knew anything about it. The moment I mentioned the packet, her face went pale. She stammered something about exploring options for us to get a bigger house after the wedding. She said she wanted it to be a surprise. But that didn't make any sense. If we were going to move, why wouldn't she talk to me about it first? Why would a real estate agency be involved without me knowing? Something about her explanation didn't sit right with me. So after she went to bed, I stayed up and started digging. The next day, I called the real estate agency pretending to be Kelly's assistant. I asked them about the details of the sale, and what they told me absolutely floored me. Kelly had listed my house for sale without my knowledge. She told them she was a co-owner, which was a complete lie, and had even signed documents pretending to be me. They had a cash buyer lined up, and the sale was set to close in 2 weeks. I asked why the sale was happening so quickly. And that's when the final piece of the puzzle clicked. The agent told me Kelly mentioned she needed the money urgently to help with family obligations. It all made sense now. She was planning to sell my house to pay off her parents' mortgage. My stomach dropped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That night, I laid out all the documents. Kelly broke down completely. I mean, full-on sobbing, barely able to get words out. She kept saying she didn't know how else to save her parents, and that I wouldn't understand. I stayed calm. Not because I wasn't mad, but because I didn't trust myself to start yelling and make things worse. I told her flat out that what she did wasn't just deceitful, it was illegal. She forged my signature, lied about being a co-owner, and tried to sell something that wasn't hers to sell. There's no coming back from that. Her reaction shocked me, though. After crying for a while, she flipped to anger, saying I was selfish for not helping her parents when I had so much. That hit a nerve. I worked my ass off to get where I am. Nobody handed me this house. I lived on bare-bones budgets, skipped out on socializing with friends, and sacrificed years of my life to save for it. And now, the woman I thought I'd marry was trying to make me feel guilty for not handing it over to her parents like some sort of savior. That argument lasted hours. She kept going in circles, 1 minute begging me to reconsider and give her another chance, the next accusing me of being heartless. Eventually, I told her we were done talking and that she needed to leave the house. I didn't want to make a scene right then and there, so I said she could stay for a little while to figure things out, but she needed to start looking for a place ASAP. For the next few days, things were tense. She was still in the house, but we barely spoke to each other. I'd come home from work and either go straight to my room or sit on the couch with headphones on, pretending she wasn't there. Meanwhile, she started acting like nothing had happened. She'd try to talk to me about random things, cook dinner like we were still a couple, and even brought up wedding plans once. I couldn't believe it. How could she think we could just go back to normal after everything? That's when I decided I needed to get legal advice. I wasn't sure if I wanted to press charges yet, but I needed to know my options. I met with a lawyer and explained everything. How she forged my signature, lied about being a co-owner, and tried to sell the house behind my back. The lawyer didn't sugarcoat it. This was serious fraud. If I wanted, I could file charges, and Kelly could face real consequences. But they also warned me it could get messy, especially if she tried to twist the story or retaliate. I spent a few days thinking it over, and the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Kelly didn't just betray my trust. She put me in a position where I could have lost the house I worked so hard for. What if I hadn't opened that packet in time? What if the sale had gone through? I'd be the one left scrambling to fix everything, all because she wanted to bail out her parents. By the end of that week, I decided to press charges. It wasn't an easy decision, but I felt like I had to protect myself. I didn't want to be the guy who let someone walk all over him just because he was afraid of drama. My lawyer helped me file the paperwork, and I let Kelly know that I'd taken legal action. She didn't take it well. Actually, that's an understatement. She completely lost it. When I told her about the charges, she started screaming at me, saying I was ruining her life and that I'd regret it. She said I was cruel for putting her in this position, and that I was choosing money over love. I didn't even respond. At that point, there was nothing left to say. I told her she had 30 days to move out, and that we were done. She stormed off to the bedroom, slammed the door, and didn't come out for the rest of the night. The next morning, I woke up to find she'd started packing. It wasn't much, just a couple of suitcases, but it was a step in the right direction. I felt relieved, honestly. I just wanted her out of the house so I could start moving on. But then, things got even weirder. About a week later, mutual friends started messaging me, asking what was going on. Apparently, Kelly had posted some dramatic rant on Facebook about how I threw her out and abandoned her when she needed me most. She made it sound like I'd blindsided her and ruined her life out of nowhere. Of course, she left out the part where she tried to commit fraud and sell my house behind my back. I wasn't sure how to handle it. Part of me wanted to post all the evidence, screenshots, documents, everything, and let people see the truth. But my lawyer advised against it, saying it could complicate the legal process. So instead, I kept it simple. I posted a short, neutral statement. Integrity and trust are the foundation of any relationship. When that's gone, there's nothing left to build on. It wasn't much, but it made people think twice about her story. Some of our mutual friends reached out privately, and I explained the situation to them. Most of them believed me right away, especially after I showed them the evidence. A few people tried to stay neutral, saying they didn't want to get involved. Fair enough, I guess. But the whole thing left a bad taste in my mouth. Kelly was clearly trying to save face by painting herself as the victim, and it was working with some people. I thought that was the worst of it, but I was wrong. One afternoon, I was at work when I got an alert from my home security system. I'd recently upgraded it, and thank God I did. The alert was a motion detection notification from the back of my house. I pulled up the live feed on my phone, and my jaw dropped. There, plain as day, was Kelly and her dad trying to break into my house. They were at the back door with what looked like some kind of crowbar or pry tool. Her dad was working on the lock while Kelly stood there holding a couple of duffel bags. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It wasn't just some random act of desperation. They came prepared. They were planning to take something, probably whatever they could grab quickly. I called the police immediately and explained the situation. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line while officers were sent to my house. I was freaking out, pacing in my office while watching the live feed. They didn't notice the cameras, so they kept at it, taking turns trying to force the door open. It felt like forever, but in reality, the police arrived pretty quickly. The live feed showed 2 squad cars pulling into my driveway, and Kelly and her dad froze when they saw the flashing lights. They tried to talk their way out of it, but the officers weren't buying it. They were detained on the spot. When I got home later that day, I met with the officers and gave them my statement. Kelly tried to claim she was just there to pick up a few things she left behind, but I called her out. She'd already moved everything out weeks earlier, down to her last sock. There was no legitimate reason for her to be there, let alone with her dad and a crowbar. I pressed charges for trespassing and attempted burglary. I wasn't about to let this slide. The officers seemed to take it seriously, especially after I showed them the footage from my security cameras. It was crystal clear what they were doing. Kelly and her dad were both taken into custody, and I thought that would finally put an end to things. Spoiler alert, it didn't. A few days later, I got a phone call from Kelly. At first, I wasn't going to answer. I mean, what could she possibly say after everything? But curiosity got the better of me. When I picked up, she immediately started crying. She told me she was sorry, and that she just didn't know what else to do. She claimed she only broke in because she was desperate to get a few sentimental things she'd forgotten. I didn't believe her for a second. Then came the bombshell. She said she was pregnant. I didn't even know how to respond at first. After a long pause, I asked her why she was only telling me now. She said she'd been scared and didn't know how I'd react. She said the stress of the breakup and everything with her parents had made her hesitant to share the news. I'll admit, for a split second, I wondered if it could be true. But something about the timing felt off. I told her, calmly but firmly, that if she was pregnant, I'd do the right thing. I'd step up and support the child, no question. But I also told her that I'd need a doctor's confirmation and a paternity test. That's when she started backtracking. She said she wasn't ready to involve doctors yet, and that I just needed to trust her. That was a massive red flag. After everything she'd done, trust wasn't exactly in the cards anymore. I told her I wasn't playing games, and that if she wanted my involvement, she'd need to prove her claims. Then I hung up. That was the last I heard about her so-called pregnancy. No follow-ups, no doctor's notes, nothing. I can only assume it was another desperate attempt to manipulate me. The final straw came about a week after the pregnancy stunt. I received a letter from a lawyer. Apparently, Kelly had hired someone to try and shake me down for money. The letter was absolutely ridiculous. It accused me of causing her emotional distress by breaking off the engagement and evicting her from my house. It also demanded compensation for the time she had lived with me, claiming she had enhanced my life in ways that deserved financial repayment. But the wildest part? The letter also demanded financial support for her parents, arguing that I'd benefited from their daughter and therefore owed them something in return. I was floored. I showed the letter to my lawyer, who honestly looked like he was trying not to laugh. He helped me draft a response that shut the whole thing down. We laid out everything Kelly had done, from the fraudulent house sale attempt to the break-in, and made it clear that if they pursued legal action, I'd countersue for damages, legal fees, and defamation. We didn't hold back, and I made sure every word was backed up with evidence. That letter must have done the trick because I never heard from Kelly or her lawyer again. The legal nonsense fizzled out as quickly as it started, and I was finally able to breathe a little easier. Looking back, the break-in was probably the most surreal part of this whole ordeal. I mean, who does that? I'll never understand what was going through Kelly's head, or her dad's for that matter. The lengths they were willing to go to were insane. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It felt like they were trying to take me down with them. I've upgraded my security system since then, and I'm way more cautious about who I let into my life. It's been a tough lesson, but I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. There's still more to unpack about this whole mess, but I'll save that for the next post. As always, thanks for reading. Writing this out helps more than I expected. Alright everyone, before we dive into the update, I have a small request. We put a lot of effort into finding these incredible stories for you every single day, and your support means the world to us. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps us grow and allows us to continue bringing you more amazing stories. Thank you. Now let's move to the update. Update 1 point. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through this saga. Writing these posts has been kind of therapeutic, and I appreciate the support. By this point in the story, Kelly was out of my house. I'd filed charges for the break-in, and her ridiculous lawyer's letter had been dealt with. But the ripple effects of everything she did weren't something I could just shake off overnight. It's one thing to cut someone out of your life, but it's another thing to deal with the mess they leave behind. After the break-in, I had to deal with some immediate fallout. For starters, the house didn't feel the same anymore. The break-in left me paranoid. Even though the locks had been replaced and the security system upgraded, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was going to try to mess with me again. I'd be lying in bed at night and hear a random creak or noise, and my mind would go straight to, what if it's Kelly or her dad trying something else? One of the first things I did was get a high-quality security door and install more cameras around the property. I even paid extra for a service that monitors the cameras and alerts me if there's suspicious activity while I'm away. Honestly, it was expensive, but it gave me some peace of mind, which I desperately needed. I also started to notice how much of my personal life had been tied up with Kelly. Little things reminded me of her all the time. The dining table where we'd shared so many meals, the bookshelf she insisted we organize together, even the couch where she used to binge watch her shows, it all felt tainted. I ended up rearranging a lot of the furniture, and I even got rid of a few things she'd picked out. It wasn't about being petty, I just needed to reclaim the space for myself. One of the more surprising challenges was dealing with mutual friends. Kelly's Facebook rant had done more damage than I initially realized. While most of my close friends sided with me after I shared the truth, there were others who either believed her sob story or didn't want to choose sides. I got a few messages that were frustrating to read, like, hey, I don't know the full story, but maybe you should try to forgive her. She's been through a lot. That kind of thing really rubbed me the wrong way. Forgive her? She committed fraud, tried to steal my house, broke in, and then tried to manipulate me with a fake pregnancy. What's there to forgive? The hardest part was losing a couple of friends who had been closer to her than me. One guy I'd known for years told me he couldn't condone how I'd treated her, and blocked me after sending a long message about how relationships are about sacrifice. It was honestly baffling. I decided I wasn't going to waste energy trying to change people's minds. If they wanted to believe Kelly's version of events, that was on them. I had my circle of real friends who knew the truth, and that was enough for me. Legally, things started moving forward with the charges I'd pressed. My lawyer kept me updated on the process, and it sounded like Kelly and her dad were in a tough spot. The footage from my security cameras was pretty damning, and the real estate fraud charges were still on the table as well. I wasn't out for blood. I wasn't trying to ruin her life, but I also wasn't going to let her off the hook for what she'd done. She needed to face the consequences. One thing I didn't expect was how much paperwork was involved. Between police reports, legal filings, and back and forth emails with my lawyer, it felt like I was constantly dealing with something new. I even had to go through a full audit of my house's ownership records to make sure Kelly's actions didn't leave any lingering legal messes. Thankfully, everything was clean, but it was still an exhausting process. Emotionally, I was kind of a wreck for a while. It's weird. When you're in a relationship, you don't realize how much you're relying on the other person until they're gone. Even though Kelly betrayed me in the worst possible way, there were moments where I missed the good times. The inside jokes, the road trips, the lazy weekends. It's hard to let go of those memories, even when you know the relationship was toxic. I started seeing a therapist, which was one of the best decisions I made during this whole ordeal. Talking to someone who wasn't involved, someone who could give me an outside perspective, helped a lot. One thing my therapist pointed out was how much guilt I was carrying. Not guilt over ending things with Kelly, but guilt for not seeing the red flags sooner. She helped me realize that blaming myself for her actions was pointless. I didn't cause her to make those choices, and I wasn't responsible for fixing her problems. Final update. Hey everyone, this will probably be my last update. Writing all this out has been a crazy experience, but it's also been therapeutic. Now that I've had some time and space from the chaos, I think I'm finally ready to close the book on this chapter of my life. So, here's what the last few months have looked like, and what I've taken away from everything. First off, let's talk about the legal side of things. The charges I pressed against Kelly and her dad moved forward, and they eventually reached plea deals. I won't get into the exact details because I don't want to risk violating any agreements, but let's just say the legal system didn't go easy on them. Kelly got a hefty fine and some mandatory community service for her role in the fraud and break-in. Her dad, who was more involved in the physical trespassing, ended up with similar penalties, but also some probation. I don't feel bad about how things turned out for them. Actions have consequences, and if they hadn't been caught in the act, they could have caused me even more harm. Knowing that the law held them accountable gave me a sense of closure. It was never about revenge. It was about standing up for myself and making sure they couldn't get away with what they did. On a personal level, one of the hardest things I've had to deal with is rebuilding trust. Not just in other people, but in myself. For a long time, I kept asking myself how I could have missed the signs. How did I not see Kelly for who she really was? The truth is, it's not that simple. Manipulative people don't show their true colors all at once. They test boundaries, push limits slowly, and disguise their selfishness as love or care. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on the relationship, and one thing I've realized is that Kelly wasn't just a bad partner. She was a master manipulator. She knew exactly how to make me doubt myself and feel like I was the one who needed to change or compromise. Looking back, I can see so many moments where she crossed the line, but at the time, I let it slide because I cared about her. That's the part that stings the most. I cared about someone who saw me as a tool for her own benefit. If there's one piece of advice I'd give to anyone reading this, it's to pay attention to how someone handles your boundaries. Do they respect them, or do they push against them? Are they willing to have honest conversations, or do they guilt and manipulate you into doing what they want? Boundaries aren't just for keeping others in check. They're there to protect you from losing yourself. Thanks for sticking with me through all of this. Writing it out has been a journey, and I'm grateful to have this space to share. Here's to moving forward and building something better. Cheers, everyone.